before we drill down on the topics that you want to discuss, and I've got some hard-hitting questions for you on your former club. Before that, have you got to take
Are they just questions or are they hard-hitting, Kane? Like, let's be serious. They're just questions, aren't they?
They're just questions. I'm sure.
Just questions.
I'm sure you're prepared.
I think I'll be able to handle the just questions.
I think you'll be able to handle yourself just fine. But I do want to discuss it, and there's a lot of Bulldogs fans that would like your thoughts on it as well. And if you are one of those Bulldogs fans, and I'm sure you would be frustrated, give Jono a call and ask him the question that you would want answered. He's closer to anyone that is in the media with the Western Bulldogs. So we'll get to that shortly. Before that, though, have you got a thought on Darcy Parish and his future?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I heard what you said in talking around 6 years versus 5 years. But if you desperately want to stay at a club and they offer you 5, I think it's not a bad deal. You're taking 5 and you're moving on. So that's my sort of thoughts on it. And the money would be similar to what he's probably asking. If you brought it back a year, they might be able to find a little bit extra just to, part of that negotiation anyway to get you there. So if you haven't signed by now, we understand that the majority that haven't signed by now generally are going to move on. It's only a small percentage that haven't signed now that do end up signing with their club, but they're more older type players that are in the sort of that negotiation phase of where they're at in their careers. Not a player like Darcy Parish who has got talent to burn and is ready to excel into the next part of his stage of his career. So yeah, it's I sort of sit there and think that he's probably going to be on the move based on that, and because desperately if he wanted to stay at the Essendon Footy Club, he'd do it for 5 and then work out what's next. So what does that take him to? 32 maybe?
Yeah.
31, 32.
Do you think it's a bad
and then
thing?
you get a 2-year deal off the back of that. You go to 34 and you're probably then assessing where your career's at anyway. So 5 years probably makes sense in terms of an age factor.
How much do you think it'll hurt Essendon if he does do what you think he will do and leave?
I think it'll hurt a bit. I really do, because you're losing a player, one of quality, one of work rate, one that pushes contest to contest. It's hard to replace. It's very hard to replace. And speaking of putting a Bulldogs flavour on it a little bit, Josh Dunkley leaving the Dogs, I think had an effect from that perspective. It'd be Darcy Parish would be very similar. He averages his probably 6 to 8 tackles a game as well. So defensively, he gets the job done around the contest. So it would be a big loss. So for the Bombers, and maybe that's what he's got over the Bombers at the moment, because I think they would understand that as well.
All right, happy to take a couple of calls from Essendon fans on that. Sean is one of those. What's your thoughts on the Darcy Parish situation, Sean? Welcome in.
Well, I've got 2 things. First, magnificent interview just before with Kane with
Jesse,
the bloke from GWS.
Yep.
But you said he was a lot like Gary Ablett Senior. Gary Ablett Senior.
No. Just quickly, I said his stats in that one game were like a Gary Ablett Senior. So 24 touches, 9 goals, 9 marks inside 50. I didn't compare him as a player to Gary Ablett Senior. Just his numbers in that one particular game against the Bombers.
All right, and then the other thing is Darcy Parish has got to be kidding himself. That whole Essendon Football Club's got to be kidding themselves after the performance they put in on the weekend.
John, I wonder, where, because he would be frustrated. They haven't had a lot of final success, clearly, and Merritt would be the other player that would be in that camp. How much of a factor that has when you get to the age that he is at, and then when they're still producing performances like we saw on the weekend.
I think it's been an improved year by the Essendon Footy Club, though. I think overall, and so if he goes to the Cats, there's no guarantees that they're going to be finals bound in 2024. Maybe Essendon are a better place to play finals next year. Who knows? So there's a lot to weigh up here from Darcy and his management, but also the fact I think Essendon are a pretty good spot to grow over the next 12 months under Brad Scott. We've seen improvement this year. We've been all over them, Kane, this year in how they actually play finals football. Now, yeah, they've had a disappointing finish to the season, but at one point there,
I declared them certainties.
There you go. So and that's why we started to follow that trend of the games they needed to win. We knew they had a tough patch where they had to win 1. If they got 2, it was a bonus. But this run home where they had to win 2 or 4 or 3 or 4, whatever we suggested they needed to do, they've let themselves down. But overall, across the season, I think the Essendon Footy Club would be very happy where they've developed to and what they can now do in a middle 6 draw next year. And are they the team to bounce out of the middle 6 next year? So we're talking, Kane, from a player that is getting the ball in contest more often than not? Is that how much of an effect is that having? Are you talking about the pure open play disposal that he should be hitting? He should be hitting that inside 50. He should be hitting that kick back into the corridor. Is it more that you're assessing? Because his numbers are down based on where he wins a percentage of his football.
There's different views on how to rate kicking efficiency as a midfielder. I think that's why Champion Data bring in a kick rating, so they measure that if you're under pressure, if it's a hack kick from stoppage, or if it is one of those ones. Like I saw Bailey Smith under no pressure on the run, miss his target over the top by about 5 metres on the weekend against West
into
Coast.
the pocket.
Brayshaw was the same from Freo. Under no pressure on the run, miss an easy lead-up target, or have an opportunity to kick a goal and miss it twice at critical stages. So there is different factors. You can't just
that's a whole new conversation. That I'm big on what players are doing in off seasons, in seasons, and what's around them for these scenarios that you discuss quite frequently.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't think there's enough. I don't think they do enough.
I think Sarong kicked it at 29% against Port Adelaide, but I still thought he had a good game. Like he had 12 clearances. I thought he was an effective player. So yeah, it is difficult to just look at kicking efficiency. But I'm with you. He's not a great kick, Craig. I'm agreeing with you, but I don't think he's the worst. And it is those ones where he's free, under no pressure, and misses that are the issue.
Hello, Kane and Jono. Great to speak to you both.
You too.
Kane, I just want to speak to you. You made a statement a couple of weeks ago about Ben Mackay and how much money he's looking to be paid if he goes to Essendon.
Yeah.
You hear me? I agree with you. You said that if he was paid any more than 450 or 500,000, any member should put their membership card in the microwave and burn it. And look, I totally agree with you, and I just hope they don't take him. He's not worth anything.
Yeah, I think my point.
800.
I don't know.
Did you use those words?
I don't know
Put the membership
I
in
may
the
have
microwave and burn
Jono
it.
and Michael. I don't know if I use those exact words. But what I think is that when players are out of contract, rival clubs get sucked in and overpaid just because they are gettable. So and there's 3 examples of this. Like Radigalia, and I spoke about this with Bucks on Monday, is a player that's worth the average wage. Like he's no better than an average AFL footballer. And that sounds like we're discrediting him. It's not. I mean, an average AFL footballer is a very good player. Like you're in the top sort of 350 players in the league, and they're paid about just over $400,000. He's a $400,000 player, which is great. Mackay's the same. Like he's no better than an average AFL player, but just because he is out of contract, some club is going to get sucked in and pay him $800,000. Zerk Thatcher is a player that my club's interested in. I watched him have 9 goals kicked against him on the weekend. Like surely they're reconsidering that. And we've seen a number of examples of that. Griffin Logue, like what Fremantle were going to offer him versus what North Melbourne got sucked into paying. Kane Cornes, another example. So there's many examples, Mike. It frustrates me a little bit that clubs get sucked in just because those players are gettable. Righto, Jono, what is going on at your former club? They got beaten by West Coast on the weekend with a spot in the finals up for grabs. And I think there's all sorts of issues at the footy club. What say you?
Yeah, well, looking at the last 2 weeks, yeah, definitely. There's been some elements of their football that hasn't been great, and yeah, there obviously is some things bubbling away behind the scenes that are having an effect. But ultimately, the last 2 weeks, and there's been a couple other games throughout the season as well, Kane, but the last 2 weeks have probably been the most disappointing because of the position the club was in to at least play finals, but then roll into a potential final series with a little bit of momentum to at least give us a sense that an impact could be made again within some September action. Where at the moment, the thing that I've been most disappointed with the last 2 weeks has been a pure effort-based aspect of the way that collectively the players and what they've put out on the park, and I suppose that effort-based aspect of things it's not talent-driven, it's not anything, it's a pure work rate. And we're completely outworked by the Hawthorn Football Club.
Why,
and
you think?
Why?
Yeah. I mean, we've all played in teams that have done that. And you're out there and you're going, I'm trying as hard as I can. But you're not. You look back at the tape and we all watch and we go, they're not. They're absolutely not. But then I look at what the Saints delivered on Saturday night, and I was luckily enough to be there live, and I thought, this is a team that's giving everything they've got.
That's right, but they had a patch where they struggled too. You know what I mean?
It's hard to do every week.
It is, but when you're playing against teams that are 16th and 17th, or 16th and 18th on the ladder, that should be just an aspect of given that you outwork this opposition, and then how much you separate them is based off your pure work rate against them. I love what the Hawthorn Footy Club's doing. I've said that all year. I think Sam Mitchell's on a winner here athletically, what profile that they've got, and their ability to push and their endeavour is first class for a young team developing. But where the Dogs are at, this is my point. But where the Dogs are at, they should have shown them another level that they need to go to as a football club, not be destroyed by their midfield or their halfback run that was provided on that particular game. So I thought, okay,
where's the blame
I thought we were outworked, Kane. Honestly, I thought we were outworked in that game, and we were beaten, and it was disappointing and everything. But then you expect the response this week against the West Coast Eagles, whose midfield is weaker than the Hawthorn Footy Club at this present time, and to come out and start the way that we did, it was worse than the week before. So then you start to think, okay, where does this lie? Where's the responsibility lie for the performance over the last couple of weeks? Now there is the combination, and it is a combination. I listened to Bont yesterday, and I listened to it closely, and whether he put his hand up to come and speak to the media or whether he was asked to go and do that, I don't know. But what I would have liked to have heard yesterday was a little bit of ownership from Bont in what the players have not executed over the last couple of weeks. And for me, it would have been based around what they should have owned, what he should have owned from a player's point of view. This is us. We own that our effort and our work rate has not been acceptable over the last 2 weeks. Because then you know that he's publicly put it out there, and this week you'd 100% get that response.
And for those that missed it and didn't listen as closely as you, what did he say?
Well, it was more around some of the reaction they got from the loss, which is in somewhat
calling out the fans,
because of the passion, and that's okay. And that was probably the main aspect of it. But I think when you come out as the leader, and he's been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, but I still would have liked him to own an aspect from a leadership point of view, not him specifically, but the leadership group. This is what we own. We've done this poorly. That's on us. And now what are we going to do to rectify that this week to keep our finals hopes alive? Because it's a question mark against the Cats. Yeah, the Cats have got some serious players out of their side this week. So therefore, you should be sort of ticking the Dogs, but you can't, can you? Because of their lack of effort over
what did you
the
think,
last
Jono,
2 weeks.
You mentioned the start. What did you think of Luke Beveridge's comments with Kingy pre-game on your station about trepidation and on edge and the overall feeling that he had leading?
Yeah, and look, and I've heard your comments too around what your thoughts are on Bevo and what the club should do with him. That is not as far as I understand, that is not going to happen at all. So therefore,
I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So for me, I go, okay, I'm thinking about what is the solution for Luke Beveridge here, because they've already made a call on Rowan Smith, and that was a tough call. Bevo was obviously keen to still have Smitty as part of the coaching staff, so that was a tough call that was made by Granny and Amit Baines. So that's been done, and what effect that's had, well, we wait and see how that unfolds over the next period of time. But I think now, with that decision being made, Luke Beveridge needs a complete new approach to his own thoughts on coaching, his own philosophy on coaching, and the way that he goes about it. He's got a chance now to really have a serious off-season think about the way that he wants to go forward as a coach. And I think he's definitely got 12 months to do it. It could be 2 years.
An adjustment as big as that?
It's not about being capable. It's about having to do that. And I think also that there has to be more than one particular change. There has to be 3 or 4 changes now.
At the club strong enough to get that message through to him that's
there
what
has to
needs
be
to happen?
If I can talk about it, Kane, openly with everybody, surely there's 1 or 2 people within a club that can have that open discussion to get the next wave happening.
Just expand a little bit on the change that you would like to see in the coach, Luke Beveridge, Jono.
Well, that's what has to happen, Kane. I think that's the key here to Bevo being in the position that he is, because the club ain't going to make a decision on Luke Beveridge. He's there. He's the one. He's got Brendan Lade next to him, and then it's who they now replace Rowan Smith with, who they replace potentially a couple of other assistant coaches with, if they go down that track and decide to make more change within the coaching realms. I don't think they can't be tight with the dollar on this one, Kane. They have to spend, and they have to spend well, because they've got the best player in the comp on their list. They've got some excellent players underneath him. They've got some emerging stars as well. And yeah, there's some players that showed improvement a couple of years ago that have stagnated a little bit. So therefore, that's why, in some ways, I think about this new approach for Luke Beveridge, who has to take it seriously in what he has to change, Kane, to move on from what we're seeing now, because this way can't continue.
No, so
it just can't. So that
he hasn't been a great ambassador for the club, and I've given a number of examples of that, which I don't need to go over again. What does the change look like for you? So you're saying change,
there's probably three or four things. Yeah. So I think he has to look at game style and player roles within the game style, and that includes the best of Marcus Bontempelli right through. I think there needs to be a change in that aspect of the way the players' approach to the game is looked at and assessed. And I think there needs to be a serious drive there. It's easy for me to go back and say Richmond of 2016. It really is. And to see the significant change in roles to their stars, but also what happened underneath that. Have the players got that ability at the Bulldogs? I'm not too sure. But there certainly needs to be a change or a shift in
Why don't they defend
something.
Jono? Why don't they defend? I say this.
Oh, they don't. Their overall defensive numbers were okay over the year, but they have their moments. I agree, and it's happened for years where the Oppo kick multiple goals on them in a hurry.
Yeah,
in a hurry,
and that's never ever in the top 5 or 6 defending back transition. It just never happens. So that needs to change. So whoever the best defensive assistant.
So maybe coaching
assistant,
helps that.
Yeah.
Maybe a new shift in coaches help that. So Brendan Lade's fresh face. What else do they need, or what else is out there that they can actually go and really get and put a good deal on the table to bring in? Because that's the next step from a coaching point of view. Maybe that's what Bevo needs to be challenged in a new way of the way the game is seen, and the way that this group of players may respond to a different approach to the way they play their football. And that could be a simple answer to being more effective in various roles that they're played, the demands on the roles, or what roles that some are seen to play at the moment, and they've stagnated compared to what they may be able to do to actually improve the depth of this footy club. So the coaching side of things, and I do agree in terms of Bevo needs to go away and have a really good think around his approach to the media and those aspects of when he first started at the club, how good it was, where it's gone to now. A full stop needs to happen on that, and then a fresh approach to his coaching. I think we'll see a fresh approach to the way that he wants to deliver a message through the media, good or bad. And I think that's definitely something that has to have a full stop on it right at this point.